Thank you for being here. I don't have any notes for this video. I want to just explain a little bit about my story so that you know who you're watching and if you really want to be part of this channel. I really want to build a really good crafting, sewing, reselling, just a really good group of people, a wonderful community here. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story and about sewing and journaling, which is kind of what are two of my really big loves besides marketing and teaching. So when I was around 11 years old, I learned how to sew. And back then, my mom didn't have a sewing machine. And so she taught me how to sew by hand. And as I learned to sew by hand, we made a lot of our Latvian costumes for Latvian song festivals. And she taught me how to make the crowns that we wore and the dresses and the capes that we wore in our folk dress. And we also went out to the garden and we would take daisies. She would show us how to take a daisy and with your finger, you poke a hole in the stem, put another daisy through, and we would make daisy crowns with that. And daisy kind of like leis, but they were more Latvian style. So she came from Latvia. And so that part of my heritage is very special to me. And then my grandmother on her side did have a sewing machine. It was one of those really old ones where it sat on one of those stands and you started to turn the wheel and then you had the pedal. I don't remember everything about it, but I learned how to sew on that machine. On my father's side of my family, my grandmother on my father's side, taught me how to crochet, how to knit, how to craft. And she taught me how to sew on a regular sewing machine, which back then I believe was a Kenmore or a Singer. So I started sewing at a very, very young age. And when I was 12, I got my first diary. My dad bought me my first diary. My parents were divorced. And for my birthday, he bought me a book about Madame Curie because I wanted to become a doctor. So he would go and he was in the Navy, he was a captain in the Navy, and he would go and find books on female nurses and female doctors and all the famous females in medicine. And this is back in the 70s where it was difficult to find those books. But he found them all for me and he would send them to me. And he sent me a diary one time and it had a little lock thing on it. Do you remember those? So I started journaling in my diary. And ever since then, since I was 12, I have kept a journal and written almost every single day of my entire life. And I am currently, if you're watching this in 2025, I am 67 years old this year. So with all of that, all of those loves and passions began to grow. Same with so I was not raised in a religious home, and then I ended up being quite religious, and I'm a Christian. And I started writing when I went back to look at some of my journals when I was 12 years old, and they would start off with "Dearest God," and then a comma, and then I would write. And so that was very interesting for me to see that. So so fast forward, I got into, my parents were divorced. I won't go into all the really sad and gory details, but my childhood was extremely, extremely rough. My mother was the mother of 4 children and I was the oldest, had a lot of responsibilities. My mother was not emotionally present or physically present much of the time. So I learned to cook, clean, make do with what we had, learned how to put clothing designs together to make my sister look good when she went to school, different things like that. So that was part of that journey. And then I fell into the wrong crowds and I was also abducted, not once, but 3 times when I was between the ages of 12 and 14. And during that time, those were some hard times. Now, back in the early 70s, late 60s and early 70s, if you were the victim, you ended up getting in trouble. And I was a victim. And so on one of the times where I ran away from the perpetrator, I was arrested and I was put into Juvenile Hall, which we called it juvie back then. And fortunately, it was in a very nice area. And so it was a very good and really nice place. And for me, I really thrived there because I had 3 meals a day, which is something I had not experienced probably most of my life after my dad left. And so I experienced 3 meals a day. And it was a really, so one of the things that they had there was a whole bunch of fabric. And I don't know why, but they had tons of fabric. They had patterns and they had all this stuff going on. They had the busts so you could make clothing. I have no idea why they did all that. I was young. I think I was 12 and 13, 12 and between 12 and a half and 13 when I went in there. And so we had these cells that we had by ourselves. They were comfortable. They weren't bad or anything like that. But I wasn't allowed to have scissors in the cell, but I was allowed to bring my fabrics in the cell. So I would take them and imagine different designs all the time. And I would make dresses and pants, and they had a lot of jerseys and stuff, which was very popular in those vintage materials. And so I would then learn how to incorporate those even without being able to cut them, and figure out ways in which to wrap them around my body, figure them, and just like trying to create in my brain and with these fabrics. And then when during community time, I would go out in that area and just spend as much time as I could after our schooling to just spend all my time designing and everything. So I got really good at that, especially with having limited resources and such. So then I was put into I was taken away from my mom, and I was put into a group home in San Francisco where I lived for the next couple of years. And there was a counselor there who had a really good sewing machine. She was also a really good cook. So she taught me how to cook soul food and all these great dishes. And then she also taught me more sewing so I could take up my level. And at the same time, she was able to get me a job modeling for Gunny Sacks of San Francisco. That's where Gunny Sacks was headquarters. I believe the girl's name is Jessica, who invented Gunny Sacks. So I would model Gunny Sack dresses, and I just loved them. And the deal was I didn't get paid, but I got to keep the dresses that I modeled. So I ended up getting a large collection of Gunny Sacks skirts and dresses. And these were very hippie style, right? Very, very popular back then. I was able to, I was able to construct, deconstruct and things, and create new patterns from them and things like that. Fast forward, I end up in Hawaii. And when I'm in Hawaii, I was trying to get out of bad situations. Again, the trouble that I was getting myself into and other people pushing me into. But I had a person that had befriended me, and he was a drafter. And so he brought over to my apartment this huge drafting table that he donated to me because he was trying to also help me. And so on that table, I started my custom design business. And so I started designing clothes for myself and then for other people as well. And one of the things I did was men's suits. And I became very good at these men's suits and was able to sell them for a lot of money. When I finally, after all of that, I found God in Jesus Christ, I joined the church. And then after I joined the church, I got married. And when I started having my family, so I shut down my design business because I was pregnant and too sick to work. And then I go on to have, during that time, I went and got my real estate license. My first husband and me did real estate together. Then we owned Taekwondo schools for 15 years. But I had 5 children with him. And then I had another baby when I was a lot older on my second marriage. But those 5 children, I sewed everything for them. I designed their patterns. I made the boys. I had 3 boys and 2 girls. I made the boys all of their suits for church, all of their shorts for the summer. I even made their bathing suits. Back in those days, it was cheaper to make things from fabrics on sale than it was to buy them in the store, where now it's vice versa. It's completely reversed, right? It's much cheaper just to go buy your clothes than to make them. So, but back then it was much less expensive for me to sew for 5 kids. So after I put the kids to bed, and I homeschooled all of them too. So after homeschool was over, sports, Taekwondo was over, we tucked them into bed. And then it was around 8, 9 p.m. and I would start sewing. And I would sew until 2 or 3 in the morning, just like I still do today. And so I would make all their clothing for them. And then my 2 daughters did beauty pageants, and I ran some beauty pageants as well. I had a beauty pageant business, and I made all their beauty pageant dresses from scratch. There were no patterns back then for those kind of dresses. So I learned how to make them with the fishing line and the ruffles, had to make my own ruffles and all of that. And those were fun times. So I made all their blankets. I made all our camping things that we need for camping. I would make our own shower. I would take these nylons and create soap dispenser thingies back in the day, put ivory soap in there and hang it from a tree. I made our cutlery holders. I made all of our quilts, made all the quilts for the kids. I made all of our window coverings. So I just was a super seamstress and designer. I didn't make any money, but it was for love, right? And for saving money. And so then fast forward, I end up getting divorced and I get remarried and my sewing kind of gets put on hold. But during all this time, I'm still journaling and I'm journaling and journaling. And then around the time when my kids were too old and they didn't want me to make them clothes anymore, I started getting into scrapbooking and creative memories and doing all of that. I met a girl who was a creative memories consultant. I would go to her house every week. Every Friday night was our night to scrapbook. So then I would take all of my family's photos and start making really beautiful albums. So that's how I got into all of the scrapbooking and journaling. And then that evolves into junk journaling and glue journals and smash books and, all of that sort of thing. And my kids my daughters kept journals, so I was helping them. We did a lot of family history. We did a lot of genealogy. So all of that was part of that. And then now fast forward to creating my dream place. So now finally I have a dream office and craft room with a gigantic project table to cut my fabrics on. I have my brand new Bernina sewing machine. I have everything that I would say that I could ever have dreamed of now at this point in my life. And so now I am on a new journey and I am the owner of Valiha Designs. And so I do handmade vintage products from other clothing. So like I'll make scrunchies out of scarves that are from the 70s and 80s, even earlier if I can get my hands on them. I do upcycling of jeans and making other products from jeans. I do regular sewing of regular vintage style fabrics, but that are new fabrics. I thrift for fabrics, make things from those. But I also make things like behind me, you'll see all my new fabrics. And so as long as they fit in my vintage, boho, or hippie-ish style, then I will I make totes, I make wallets, wristlets, scrunchies, and tote bags, book sleeves, and Kindle sleeves. So, and a few other things. I just can't remember them. I don't have any notes, so I'm just, talking from my heart. So I do all of that. And then of course I do card making. I make bookmarks and stickers, and I do a lot of journaling, and I do bullet journaling. I do all those journals that I just mentioned before. So on my channel, I have like a variety of all of these things. And so if you see a video and you're sewing and you want to see my fabric hauls, but you find my journaling videos, that's fine. Just ignore the journaling video and wait for my next fabric video. Right now, I've been doing a lot of hauls because they're super popular. You guys just absolutely love them. I've been doing a lot of comparison shopping so I can teach you where to go to get the best deal on your fabrics and notions and things like that. And I also do unboxing videos. So whenever I buy something that's for the crafting space or important for the office, I do an unboxing video for you so you can see the item. And I try to do a lot of tutorials. So I have a lot more videos than I can ever get up on YouTube, put it that way. So there's so many in my photos, in my iPhotos. But I am getting there, and I just want to welcome you to this journey with me. I have come full circle in my life, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. On all of the horrific things that you would not even want to hear about that happened to me as a child, helped me to become who I am. I am not a victim. I went from being a victim to being a survivor to being a conqueror. And I conquered those. I have broken those ties that bind. If you're ever in a situation where you are in or know somebody that's in that kind of a situation, I can help you. So please reach out to me because I love to do that kind of work. It helps you heal as you talk about it. As you talk about your traumas, as you talk about these things, you heal every time you speak on it. So it empowers you. It makes you stronger. And so don't be a victim, right? And anyway, I want to just tell you that I love so much that you're here. I hope that you will subscribe to my channel. I hope that you will enjoy my videos. And please let me know if there's anything that you want me to show you in videos or teach you or help you with. Thank you so much.